Hi Scott, how are you?
Good. I'm in my studio space right now. I was just practicing some trumpet.
Is it downtown Montreal?
It's kind of in the Mile End area, like right near the Saint Laurent skate park, right around there.
Are you a born and bred Montrealer?
No, I grew up in Connecticut in the States.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my Montreal connection is my mother though. She grew up on the West Island, so my whole life I was like visiting and visiting family members and stuff. And when it came time to decide where to go to school, McGill seemed like a good choice economically.
What did you study at McGill? Of
I did jazz performance for the trumpet.
course you did.
Yeah, exactly.
So where did music start for you?
My parents aren't particularly musical. There was always a piano in the house, and I would sometimes bash on the keys. And my dad plays a little bit of piano. He would play organ in church a little bit as a kid, but neither of them were particularly passionate about music. They're both journalists, so they really care about words and books and stuff. So I was like reading a lot and drawing and not really playing music until I was about 9 years old is when they start you in Connecticut. In my particular town, I started on the trumpet completely by accident.
Oh,
Uh, there was like some day that you're supposed to try out all the instruments and see one that's a good fit for you. And I guess I was sick that day or something, and I missed that day, so they just handed me a trumpet, and uh, that's how it started, I guess.
was that the only instrument that was left?
Yeah, something like that. I think so.
Well, it seems to have worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I just I started super young, but I didn't really do anything except not quit until I got to high school, and that's when I got more passionate about music. I went to a high school in Hartford, Connecticut, um, called the Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts. It's like an arts focused high school, and that's where I was introduced to jazz, and I was surrounded with all these peers and mentors who were like really serious about jazz and really loved it, and that's kind of like where I caught the music bug for real.
So you started with the trumpet, but then like discovered jazz later on. Usually it's the other way around.
Yeah, it's funny, but yeah, I was only playing like kind of concert band music, like my trumpet, my first trumpet teacher was like a polka musician. He was like a Polish polka guy.
Right.
So I was like playing stuff like that, and like not super engaged with it, but just kind of stuck with it. And at that age, I feel like that's the most important thing because I don't know, unless you're that particular kind of kid who gets super obsessive about something. I feel like I was the kind of kid who was just kind of all over the place and just like was trying all kinds of different stuff.
So jazz is a very broad genre. Was there
hmm
anything specific that you discovered that you particularly like attached yourself to?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at that age, I guess I was like in grade nine, like 13 or 14 years old or something. And I remember like the first week of class, someone put on um, a Roy Hargrove record and a Chris Potter record and a Jackie McLean record all back to back, like one song from each. So it was just this crazy swath of like 50s hard bop, hard swinging, old school stuff, and then this kind of super modern like power fusion stuff, and then this kind of like groovy, RH Factor, Roy Hargrove like hip hop influenced kind of jazz music, and it was all just like very overwhelming all at once, getting that whole sense of the umbrella right away. But I'm pretty grateful for that too.
Yeah. And did you have somewhere that you could begin to play that kind of stuff? Like, was there anything happening in your environment that you could get involved with?
As far as outside the classroom, not a ton. Um, but
Because
but like
most teenagers are not getting involved in jazz music like at that age.
yeah, yeah, for real. It's like there's like a couple places in Hartford where you could play. There was like a record store where every week while it was open, the record store open would let local bands play there, and then he'd pay you in like three records or something, which was really fun.
Nice.
So each person in the band could get three free records from the store if they played there. I think was how it worked, and so I did that, and then there was like every Monday there was like a jazz jam nearby. But yeah, for me it was really like at that age, the classroom environment was where it all went down.
And now, like, you've been involved in the Montreal music scene for a while.
Mm-hmm.
You've been playing with Busty in the bass and Pierre Kwenders. What's the other one? Moonshine. Yeah, so that's an eclectic mix right there. So you seem to be able to sort of dip in and out of different styles of music.
Yeah, it definitely, that's been my experience, is like very eclectic, for lack of a better word. Like, yeah, I did a couple gigs with Pierre as like his own music, and then a couple where I was just kind of a trumpet player while there was like a rave going on, which is really fun. It helped me kind of discover, the more kind of get deeper into the electronic music scene, and I don't know, just gain. It's just such a different side of performing music and experiencing music than jazz, but still there's so much overlap, I find. And that, I think that's kind of been my experience, is like, oh, I've like played like these crazy free jazz gigs in a loft for 10 people and it's been life-changing, but also at a rave for 500 people where I'm just sort of like playing one note every 32 bars and it's still life-changing. And then, you know, Busty in the bass is totally its own thing as well. So yeah, it's been very interesting. It feels like now I'm in a moment where I'm trying to like pull all these things together, all these very different experiences, and try and find the common threads, I suppose.
And now you have your own album, debut album, coming out on March 24th. What can you tell me about that, and what do you get from your own music that you don't get elsewhere?
I guess my mission for my music, which applies to this record but kind of applies to the whole journey going forward, is to very like unabashedly like unite those common threads that I'm seeing between a lot of different stuff. That's how I see it, of like, well, you know, it's really fun to play in Busty, but there's X, Y, and Z I can't do there that I think would overlap with the thing that when I sit in at Moonshine, I can't really do there, but I could see how it might fit together. And then, when I played the free jazz gig, you know, it doesn't quite go to that dancey zone or into that composition zone. And it's just like, I don't know, a lot of pieces of like in-betweens coming together. In-betweens, and I'm not sure how best to put that, but
yeah, I get what you mean. It's like you're in the middle of a circle and you're kind of taking influences from all these things that you've done to create something that's unique to you. Yeah.
Try to make it as not genre specific as possible, you know.
Yeah, well, I think you've achieved that. Like, I have to congratulate you on the album. I love it. It's a beautiful thing, and it is really different. And I can see like the electronic elements that you've pulled in and the way that you've used vocals almost like an instrument. And I just love the flow of it as well. Like it really feels like, you know, to use a cliche, that you do go on a journey with this album. Was that intentional? Were you deliberate about the sequencing for this? Because obviously when somebody has a lot of lyrics in their songs, it's a different kind of journey than a musical one that you've done with this album.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, thank you. I really appreciate that. But yeah, I definitely like the flow of things is very important to me, and especially being able to see from a bird's eye view what is the overall highs and lows of this listening experience of an album. So yeah, I definitely that's sort of how I see it, of less of like which individual song needs to be first or last or in the middle for content as you would a lyricist, I suppose, but more just like this journey of like, how am I feeling? Do I need a rest? Do I need to pick up the energy? It's abstract like that. And another thing I think I really appreciate about getting to do an album is just the sense of continuity, like sort of variety versus continuity, like creating something that feels like its own little world or its own sort of movie with, you know, that takes place in a particular location with particular characters. And that's how I think about it a lot, of like, okay, like Sarah, my vocalist, she's a particular character that plays a very important role in this album, actually. And same with Kyle, my drummer, and knowing when to have them in the scene versus they're not part of the scene. And yeah, it's just different kinds of balance, I suppose.
Obviously, you're doing the trumpet. Production too?
Yeah, it's co-produced with Christopher Vincent, who's a longtime collaborator and very close friend. Yeah, we produced it together. We actually have done an album before this. It's that has come out where it's a similar thing where there was a lot of band performance and recording, and Chris was really on the ground as an engineer, but then also as a producer, and then also as a mixer. And we have kind of a real collaborative back and forth where we're experimenting with different tones and experimenting with editing and post-production and trying to like create that sense of the bigger picture.
One thing that artists struggle with is knowing when an album is finished, like, and you're going to hand it over to the world. Was that something you struggled with, or did you know when it was done?
I find it's really, for me, that's not necessarily always a block. It's I think the way I define that is there's a certain point at which you know you could continue, but it's not in the service of the project. It's in the service of like, well, I could make this better because I want to be a better artist. You know, if I was a better trumpet player, then I could do a better trumpet solo. So I better just keep recording and recording. But at a certain point, well, this is the best I'm going to do today, tomorrow, or next month. And I can want to be a better trumpet player a year from now, but it doesn't really have to do with this album. And as soon as I start feeling that way, that's when I say like, okay, this part of the process might be done. You know, it's time to ease the brakes on the
yeah, it's like a snapshot in time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the jazz world kind of is like good training for that, of accepting the moment and enjoying making, you know, decisions that you can't go back on. Of like so much of the original jazz world, as you know, is like one take. You know, they just played it the way they played it in the studio and that particular day, and it's captured on record, and there you have it. And I definitely like look up to that as like a way of being, you know.
And then usually that means that when they play it live, if they play it live, that it's a different thing altogether again. Exactly.
Yeah. I was thinking about this earlier today. I really want to play with this band a lot more. But it's been tough finding places to play for this particular type of music right now in Montreal.
Really?
Well, yeah, I think there was like, if you were familiar with Resonance Cafe, that was really the kind of community hub of my sort of,
I haven't been there, but I've heard it mentioned repeatedly. So it seems to have sort of a little bit of a mythical reputation.
Is exactly, yeah. It was quite mythical. It was really like a very musician-forward place to play, where it was had a very strong community and a lot of people there. And now that that's gone, it's a bit more scattershot. If you want to play sort of in between music, or music that doesn't like clearly fit on like a bill, you know.
Right.
And for me, I'm less interested these days in being like the second of like 3 bands at a bar that's really loud, and you know, the other 2 are rock bands that just got formed yesterday, or are wonderful too sometimes. But you know, like it's that particular scene doesn't speak to me as much as like I don't know, something more either community oriented or bringing in a broader sphere of what the experience might be.
You're in Montreal, which definitely has a reputation for jazz music. Obviously with the Jazz Fest and all of that.
For sure.
So is that something that you would like to get involved in? I assume it is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I always enjoy the Jazz Fest each year. I think the programming's been great and getting better all the time. And yeah, the Off Jazz Fest too is great, and everything Suoni does. I think there's like a lot of great opportunities for music in the city for sure.
I just want to touch quickly on the artwork. Because that seems to be a big part of what you do.
I do visual art mostly through the computer sense.
Okay.
I draw and do that kind of stuff for fun. But yeah, I'm really excited about the kind of visual aesthetic of this record. I got to work with a good friend named June Barry, who goes by Boycott as her artist name. And she did the cover art, she did the music video, and I think it's another, I find, strong connection with an artist who really cares about creating a world and creating characters. She all of her figures that she draws, like the animals and the humanoid creatures, they're all kind of part of her personal sense of mythology and her personal kind of world, and she brings that to every project that she does. So it was a real treat to work with her and have her line her world up with my sonic world, I suppose.
Yeah, it works really, really well. And I can imagine when you do get to play this live, using those kind of visuals within the show would just like add another layer to it. I think it'd be fantastic.
Yeah, totally.
So you do all these different things and you've been involved in multiple projects. Would you say this project now is the one that brings you the most satisfaction?
I would say in the sense that it's like the most personal. It's the most personal project for sure. I think it's funny. I get different types of satisfaction from different things, you know. So I hesitate to quantify it quite like that. But certainly, this is the one where I really want to see it grow, and I want to play all the time. And I think the record is one thing, but when I play live with the band I play with, it really becomes a different thing, and it really leans into that sort of jazz sense of every time we play it, it's going to be a different thing. And for me, I'm realizing more and more that that's like where I kind of, my soul wants to live as a person, is just playing music in front of people that way. So I think that'll say that. Yeah, I guess so.
Cool. Okay. Last two quick fire questions.
Sure.
What's the record that you think you've listened to more than any other in your lifetime?
Shoot, there's a couple of these. Could be Hard Groove by the RH Factor. Could also be Wynton Marsalis Live at the House of Tribes from like 2006 or 8 or something like that. Just
okay.
Yeah.
I like it when people answer that question with albums that I haven't heard.
Yeah.
Because that gives me something to go and explore.
Oh, cool. Yeah, these are wonderful albums. So, yeah.
And apart from yourself, obviously, who do you think is doing things fresh in the world of jazz music in 2023? Who's exciting you the most?
Who's exciting me the most in jazz in 2023? I mean, it's a really great time, to be honest. Like it's hard to pin it down to one or two, but I think like it's a great time for jazz, and there's tons of like cool, exciting new stuff. And I personally think everything going on in Montreal right now deserves like a ton of attention and is like really exciting. I think like just the people in my band's projects, their solo projects, like Experimental Kindness, anything Sarah Rossy is doing, Evan Shay, the saxophonist, like there's a really interesting cross, I don't know, that eclectic sense of collaborating across genres, but coming from a jazz root is very strong here in Montreal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd recommend all that stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a good time for music, and especially, as you say, jazz. Like, I'm from the UK, and the London scene just seems really, really exciting at the moment as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Ezra Collective and all those kind of people doing stuff, and people jumping in and out of bands over there all the time as well. It's great. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much for your time. Good luck with the album. And yeah, thanks again.
Thanks so much.